Okay, thank you, Yvonne. We're going to take questions with a panel. I'm going to put the lights up. So, great example of what you can do even in a rented home. People do all kinds of sometimes funky, sometimes creative programs that are kind of off of the grid. People are capturing water, they're reusing water, they're learning how to do it better with time. We'll have one more discussion of that later, but right now I thought with Yvonne online, Parker Davis, and also joining us, we have a special guest, Joy Langford, who is the elected director from District 1 of the Water Replenishment District, the key agency that actually puts water back in the ground across a large swath of Southern California and then pumps it back up. And they don't import any water from other places, unlike other water agencies in Southern California. So that's a real success. That's what we should be looking for. So with that, I'm going to open up to questions for people who are here in our audience, to people online. If no one else has any, I think Charmy would like to start.
I have a question.
Okay.
And that's for Parker, because you mentioned...
We all might need to speak up a little, I think, yeah.
The question is for Parker, and it has to do with the coyotes. And so you mentioned the wild cherries, and the fact that it has to go through their digestive system for it to go. But doesn't that mean they also die, or do they just get really very sick?
No, because they co-evolve, like I said, a soft bite. So as the cherry trees started evolving to put more and more cyanide in their seeds, the coyotes developed a soft bite so they can consume the fruit without cracking into the seed and poisoning themselves. So they actually swallow the seed whole, so you'll see the seed whole in their scat. All they consume is the fruit of the flesh of the fruit of the cherry.
So their digestive juices do not destroy the seeds?
No, it just dissolves the coating on the seed, and then you'll see whole cherry pits out in coyote. If you're a big weirdo like me and you spend a lot of your time wandering around the mountains by yourself looking at animal poop, you'll notice pretty quickly that you start to see cherry pits in the coyote scat in the area around here. So and that's how they germinate into the trees. In the nursery, when we want to germinate cherry pits, we have to give it a treatment in order to simulate the effects of the digestive system on this. So if I collect a cherry, just put it in a pot, it's not going to grow. I have to actually give it a bath in some kind of something that will dissolve that. So usually we use like rotten milk actually, or some kind of acid bath to dissolve that.
Fascinating, coevolution at work. Anyone else? Katie?
Two questions. One, Yvonne, did you get catnip? And if not, why not? Because really would have fans.
Yvonne, did you hear that?
Well, if not, I suggested you. And then my other question was, you said in Pasadena, Parker, that used to be like huge super blooms. Where was that?
Well, there's a street, for example, in Altadena called Poppy Fields, and it's kind of the location of one of the largest ones of those fields. They were all over the place. In fact, all over the state. I've heard of these projects recently where all they're doing is just removing the invasives, and the native seed bank is then allowed to come out, and you can restore a whole meadow just by getting rid of the invasives sometimes. So there are these banks of seeds that still exist in the soil from the historic plant populations that are still out there. There's another example in Pasadena, a location called Earthside Nature Center that my nonprofit, Plant Community LA, is actually actively trying to get a lease from the city of Pasadena to restore it. In the 80s, it was restored by a group of naturalists locally and volunteers. And they were able to restore this whole 3 acres to a beautiful wildflower meadow again. There's still articles in the LA Times archive. If you Google Earthside Nature Center Pasadena, it'll pop right up. There's articles talking about if you want to go see the super bloom, but you don't want to leave town, you can see it right here at this local hidden gem in Pasadena. So that's another project that we're working on to try to restore that again. It's unfortunately been returned to weeds again as it hasn't been maintained anymore by the folks that
Okay.
I was gonna ask Parker about sage. I had white sage last year, and I had it in a little pot, and it grew to my soil, and then my plant died. And I don't know if it was because my neighbors, that they guys started telling me about it, and they started taking out little things. Do we plant? So my question is, when I replant another sage plant, do I plant it by itself, or do I plant it with others around it?
Great question. So you can absolutely plant it just by itself if you want. If you do plant it with other plants, you want to give it room to grow so it can be happy. So a white sage plant may start small in a little 1 gallon or a 4-inch when you get it from the nursery, but it wants to be 4 to 6 feet wide. So I like to put them about 4 to 6 feet away from any other plant, if the other plants have the same spread. If you want to combine it with some other plants, there's a whole host of plants to choose from. I oftentimes approach garden design from the perspective of a restoration sort of scientist, right? And so I like to look at plant communities that exist naturally in our local area. And white sage is a keystone species of the sage scrub habitat. So some of the other plants that I might plant alongside white sage would be black sage, California buckwheat, chaparral, yucca, sagebrush, California sagebrush, it's called cowboy cologne. It's not a true sage, it's actually the sunflower family. The Ensalia californica, deer grass, those are all plants that it would naturally associate with in wild spaces. And so that's a really good cue to figure these plants probably like being near each other. They may share similar communities of mycelium that happen underground. That's a lot of times a big or other microorganisms that associated with the roots of the soils around those plants typically might get along well with each other. So that's kind of how I approach that.
Yeah, I have a question for Joy and a question for you, Parker.
Sure.
I'll go with Joy first so you can answer the voice a little bit. So Joy, so as a landlord representing renters, and I happen to be a renter as well, it's really very difficult as a renter for you to have these kind of projects, especially if you have a landlord who's uncooperative. Do you have any advice that you can offer some of us that are renters or maybe in the same position as Yvonne, as to maybe how we can approach the landlord or what's a landlord, what would our landlord be willing to do? So I know in Yvonne's case, her house, they have very limited guttering for them to use their rain barrels. Would landlords be open to something like that? Because we are helping, California save water, conserve water. So what do you think is the best approach?
Talking to your landlord. Believe it or not, your landlord is usually going to be, if the space is available, is going to be on your side as far as getting programs out there that are going to help conserve water. You have to remember a lot of times for the landlord, it's also about the bottom line. Utilities are through the roof right now, water included. And we all understand the necessity to conserve water where we can, find great ways to use the green space. Lawns are something of the past now. And if you have a lawn still, it will shortly be something of the past. Just the amount of water that it takes to water a lawn, the aesthetics of it, not being able to keep your lawn green with all of the regulations going on with water. This is a perfect time to broach the conversation with your landlord of different ways that you see that projects can take place that can keep the aesthetics of the property, but yet at the same time, save money, be a cost measure, saving, and something that is easy for an off-site landlord to be able to maintain with your property managers or the tenant when discussing and having an open dialogue between what you can bring to the table as far as if you degreen the area, what you're willing to do as a tenant to make sure that it still stays presentable enough for the neighborhood.
Go ahead, you asked your question, but I want to follow up on that. Was it about that?
Yes and no, it was more towards schools.
Okay, so I'll just follow up. There are incentives that landlords can take advantage of. Renters can't always, but it's up to $5 a square foot to take. It's a great opportunity, and it's usually until the money runs out, so it's good for people to get on board. This is the time of year to be able to do it instead of the middle of summer when people want to try to trade. There's also incentives for both rain barrels, but more importantly, larger cisterns as well. So that's to the benefit of the landlords, but also for the tenants who want to participate. In addition, there are multifamily programs that go out to apartment owners and then go to the tenants themselves and then do direct installations of toilets. We did toilet programs back in the 90s. I was drought coordinator in Pasadena. A lot of community-based organizations like Mothers of East LA and others went out to communities. That's been over 20 years. So all those toilets that were put in, that were called ultra low flow at 1.6 gallons, can now be replaced with high efficiency of 1.4, 1.2, and the other ones have kind of gone through their life cycle. So there's a lot of opportunity to make changes, and certainly the price of water, the price of electricity, and as everyone's noticed, gas are not going down, they're going up and up, and they will continue to do so. And hopefully, whoever your water agency will give you a benefit for using less rather than some that are beginning to charge more the less you use. Anyway, I just wanted to add that on, but thank you. It's nice to have that perspective also from someone who sits on the water board as well, so you hear it from both sides. So go ahead, your question, and then Charmaine had a follow-up this too. Yeah.
We were at the Alberto Robles Center last Saturday. And yeah, we loved it. And we went back to our school and the city council at Compton. And I was telling the city of Compton how we need to take better care of our river because we have Compton River. I heard that they just got $10 million to take care of the Compton River and stuff, and they want to put a pavement. And I was heartbroken because I know that we need to refill our aqueduct. So I've been going over there and trying to make sense. I'm like, I don't work for the water, but I care about water. And I also care about the environment. And I also been talking to my daughter's school, and I was telling them that they should go and visit you guys. So I went to the school board, and I've been trying to, get those conversations because I think it's important to have it at our homes, but even more important to have it, those programs in the schools. I'm from Compton, and most of the time we take for granted that we have the LA River and the Compton River, and we have all this opportunity to capture water, yet we're not doing it. And it's very frustrating, and sometimes to even get those points across in 3 minutes when you're talking to the city council, and I'm just taking paperwork to say like, you guys need to read it. Like, we have so many cool things. So do you guys have something like more advocacy for citizens like myself? I'm a homeowner, to bring to the school board, to bring to city council, so we can all work together, because ultimately that's the way that it's gonna be better for everybody, I think, in 100 years. So yeah.
Yeah, so listen, the Robles Center, which you are speaking of, is a wonderful facility. It's education at the core of like a Disneyland of water. The presentations that we have, the beauty of the facility. The one thing about the facility, it opened up in 2020, right before the pandemic, where we had lots of school tours that we were planning, really getting out there in the community. Then the pandemic hit. So now we're trying to build back up with different school districts, such as Compton schools, Pico Rivera, trying to get the word out so that we can get more children involved in coming to see what's going on at the facility and just to learn about water. And on a higher level, we're trying to work with high school students and junior college students to get more jobs in water for people in our community. So yeah, we've got a lot that we're working on, and it is residents like you that do understand the importance of water. We right before all of these storms came along, it was all drought, right? Everyone's talking about the governor on down is talking about the drought. Now it's quiet. So you get a few drops of rain and people think that the problem is alleviated. And then we're gonna have to go through this whole cycle again of getting people re-educated about what's going on with water, so on and so forth. So it's really important that you stay involved as a homeowner and as a constituent to keep the conversation going.
I just feel like we need more tools to be able to be more effective, especially because I'm a homeowner and I pay property taxes, but my voice goes so much with this, the people, I think when you guys give us tools and kind of think it's easier for us, especially with Compton. I talked to the vice president of the school board there, and they were very interested, and I'm like, oh, but I'm like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't work for them.
Well, no, stay in touch with our staff.
Yeah.
We put tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars into water kits, different paraphernalias that we can hand out in the community. So if ever you know of a community event or a school event or any sort of event where supplies might be needed, we're one phone call away. The supplies can either be picked up at our office, or if we have the staff available for that weekend, so to say, and that date isn't already taken up, we'd love to come out to schools and educate, or parks, or wherever we can go, that presentations are being made on the environment.
What was the name of the center again?
Albert Robles
Albert
Center, so they call it ARC for short. And it's in Pico Rivera.
So I've been finding that a lot of times when tenants want to talk to landlords, I mean, especially in such a big city, there's the property management groups liaisons in between. They want to be able to not have to talk to tenants. You can't access the landlord, and there's no communication between. I'm seeing that everywhere. Everyone I talk to has some kind of conflict with landlords. They can't really talk to them. What would you say? What do you see as a solution about that? If there's some kind of association of building managers that could be open to something like that?
That can be pretty difficult with management companies who are basically the middleman person. I would basically try to get a letter, a semi-official letter from yourself as to what the improvements are that are going to be made, that it would save money, thus, hopefully be able to help stabilize the rents. Right now, it's landlords against us, right? Landlords are constantly going up on rents, and that's partially because we're being taxed like I don't know what as well. The eviction laws, whether right or wrong, depending on the tenant and what the situation is very taxing, right? The landlord is responsible for that mortgage, and they're not getting any break from the government or anyone else. So we need to find ways to, keep the dialogue open, let the landlord know that this is something that would also, help him or her to regulate the rents. When it comes down to it, we all are going to need to find ways to save, whether it's with gas, electric, or water. Everything is going up so exorbitantly, including an egg. So, we have to all really pitch in and put our minds in. And if you do get a presence in front of the landlord, you just need to be very, genuine about it, that these are problems facing us all. And we need to have a more open line of communication with the property manager that can get information to you as well, so we can all figure out how to get through some of these financial crunches that we face.
I was gonna ask about Compton River, Compton River Park.
Compton Creek, right?
Compton Creek.
Which
There
is
you go,
Which
Chris.
has had a lot, I've been there when the EPA administrator came out about 10 years ago. And I know environmental organizations, including Field Day, through the community college and others have worked on it. So I'm sure Sierra Club has as well. So I'd be happy to get you in touch with the people that have been working on Compton Creek.
Yeah, but my question was, there's concerns about mosquitoes on the creek.
Mosquito bait, yes.
Yeah, and so, yeah, so I just kind of wondering how it, because ultimately it's better to take the concrete out because we want the water to be absorbed and whatnot. But then when it creates, a mosquito problem, how do you guys mitigate that problem? Because ultimately, I think it's better to take concrete out than to put more concrete, but I have seen that the water does tend to stay there, it's very green and stuff like that, so how are you guys looking at this issue?
More so it is being looked at by the mosquito abatement, board in Compton. You know, we'll follow through there's so many departments that are involved in something like that, including, you know, the EPA, the Department of Toxic Substance Control, because there's lots of business in Compton, making sure that there's, you know, that, you know, something positive will come out of, you know, if the only answer is to take the concrete out. But, you know, more so right now, that's in the hands of so many other agencies besides the water agency. It just becomes a quagmire.
The Army
But,
Corps of Engineers,
yeah,
the
that,
Regional Water Quality Control Board, there are a lot of agencies, and the effort is trying to get those agencies to talk to one another and come up with solutions that work for everybody rather than individual workers. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Supposedly, I have an issue with it because I live in the city of Compton. I know that we have a lot of management problems that's going on and how the city's run. So I just want to make sure that that's being taken care of and overseen because I think it's so important to be protected.
they have a meeting in Compton, the mosquito abatement board, I think that's what they call it.
Mhm.
But you can easily find it online. They have a meeting once a month that operates kind of just as a civic meeting.
Yeah.
I would make sure that I go and see, you know,
The people that run that is the same people that are involved in the
yeah,
city
they're,
management.
right.
It's, yeah, we need somebody else because we have a lot of problems with how the city is being managed. And so the same people that run the city board, they go to the school board and whatnot. I just think it's important to bring it up and to bring awareness to everybody, you know?
Yep.
Because we need, and the water is, obviously, it's a gift for all and the team is alive and the more people that make sure that we're protecting water. You know, that's my main thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Get on that mosquito abatement board yourself, then you can see what.
I was gonna say the same thing.
We've done that.
We're voting for it.
All right, Charmy, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to Parker for a minute, but Joy, you actually answered the other question I had for you, which Katie brought up about the landlords. So Parker, because you did mention putting in, you know, like natural grasses and so on. But you know, we do have a certain amount of people who may have dogs or smaller children that still want to keep a lawn. What would you say to them? Because I know usually when I'm doing this, I always advocate for using a drought tolerant lawn, whether you use clover, you know, yarrow, and so on. But what would you advocate for those folks that would still like to keep a little piece of lawn because maybe they have dogs or younger kids, or they just like the aesthetic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than plastic.
Yes,
Right,
no astroturf.
no.
That's going up in my
Definitely
neighborhood.
not recommending anybody put any plastic in their yards. Yeah, so as you mentioned, yarrow is a great option. It creates a really lovely lawn substitute. There's also a number of native grasses that can be used very similarly to a traditional sod turf, and it essentially achieves the same effect and you're still able to reduce your water bill by quite a lot. Now, most of those grasses are a little thirstier than most of the other native plant options out there, so it's not the most water-wise option to try to like recreate a lawn, but nonetheless, it's still better than a traditional lawn. So there are lots of species out there. Native bent grass is a beautiful one. Thin grass is a beautiful one. Bootaloo is really popular. those are also dog and kid safe, so dogs can run around on it all day, they can eat it all day long, kids can eat it, and no one's gonna get hurt from, or sick from the grasses. So, lots of options.
Yeah, because I think that's really important. Now, when you have someone like Yvonne who presented, who's a renter and it's all concrete, are there any particular plants or trees? She says she has a lot of feral cats. Anything in particular you could recommend for her, keeping in mind that she is a renter and of course like tell our renters, even if you just have a windowsill, grow some herbs. I always say that, grow some, fresh basil and make nice fresh pasta, some garlic oil, and your pasta is set. And so what would you say to those folks that, maybe small plants that you can keep if you're a renter on your windowsill, or if you're a renter, and I'm speaking mostly about renters because that's a huge problem in the city. 60% of people rent in LA County, and so and I get these questions all the time. So that's why I'm lifting the topic today.
Well, I rent, and I was able to talk to my landlord about putting in native plants without too much of a problem. So I suggest you start by talking to your landlord, as we discussed earlier, because a lot of times they are more open to the discussion than you might assume. But in addition to that, there are a number of native plants that are suitable for container gardening. One of the ones that we have here today is that white sage that I showed you earlier. The deer grass is up there. Both of those are really good options for container gardens. And I have a whole host of other container gardening plants that I like to show off at the nursery, so if anybody wants to check them out, happy to talk about them. There's also some really great resources online. Pete Ballou up at East Bay Wilds in Oakland does a lot of really great container gardening with native plants and had a number of presentations on YouTube you can check out. Theodore Payne does a container gardening class. They do a really good job. So I recommend people definitely explore those options because container gardening can be a really fun, creative way of working with these plants. It's definitely like kind of different in a lot of ways from landscaping, but there's something really precious and beautiful about a well-potted plant in a nice container with stuff. Top dress with some interesting rocks. So lots of options there as well.
Great, I want to thank our panel. We're going to move on because we've got some great other presentations. And then we're going to have some more questions and answers with everyone at the very end. So Lee Gerard, I knew from a long time ago when we had natural history. We had a great time with tons of kids. And he came in and talked about gray water. He'll also maybe talk a little bit about rainwater capture. I just want to talk about the scale of it a tiny bit. So in a single inch of rain, you can get 648 gallons off a 1,000 square foot roof. So there's a huge volume of water you're actually dealing with. As Yvonne realized, she kept adding and adding rainwater capture to the scale that never going to quite capture I live in Santa Monica. We have 200,000 gallons under our main library that provides all of the watering. Our new Pico library actually uses rainwater for flushing the toilets rather than imported water. And Tree People has 250,000 gallons underneath their parking lot that will fill up in a couple of big storms because they get hit heavily on the top of Mulholland. So those are kind of the scale that I wanted to talk about.